Welcome to the second writing vlog for The Solar Queen. The Solar Queen is the second book in my high fantasy series, The Sun and Moon Saga. Over the course of this last year, I have published the first book, Aurora and Lunar, in 3 separate installments: The Misfit Princess, The Rebel Coven, and The Near Impossible Quest. Basically, I had been working on Aurora and Lunar for 10 years. I started writing in 2015, and then by the end of 2020 I was happy with the story, finally, and I started editing the language. I started doing the line edits. And then finally, in 2024, I started publishing the book in those 3 installments: The Misfit Princess, The Rebel Coven, and The Near Impossible Quest. Finishing that book and getting it out into the world, it was a decade's worth of work. Since I finished the first draft, which I finished the first draft in early 2018, since I finished the first draft, I had been itching to write the sequel, but I didn't want to let myself start writing the sequel until I was done Aurora and Lunar, until I could confidently say that I was done Aurora and Lunar, the first book. So it's been about 2 weeks of me drafting The Solar Queen, and over the course of these last 2 weeks I have been, life has still been up and down, because life is always up and down, but I have just generally been feeling so fulfilled and so joyful and happy, because this is a project that I have wanted to work on for 7 years, and for a while there I didn't even know if I would ever get to it. Although on the one hand I was afraid I would never get to it, but on the other hand I knew I was going to get back to it. These books, I've tried writing other books, I've tried writing in a whole variety of genres, but these books are my favorite thing to write, hands down. These books, they just feel like they have a piece of my soul in them. I am determined to get them written, to get them edited and polished and put out into the world. I am ahead of schedule. I can't remember my exact word count, but I know that it's over 16,000 words right now, which it's kind of crazy and humbling to think about this, because last year I drafted 3 books, all of them about 40,000 words. So if I was drafting another 40,000 word book, I would be almost halfway through the first draft by now. But I'm not. I'm drafting, I don't know how long it's gonna be. I don't want the first draft to be any more than 200,000 words, because I want the book to be between 200,000 and 300,000, or maybe it'll be less, I don't know, but I'm anticipating that it'll be between 200,000 and 300,000, and I'm an underwriter on my first draft, and I tend to write a lot more as I revise, so I don't want the first draft to be any more than 200,000 words. So at 16K, I'm not even 10% of the way there. I've written 16K in 2 weeks, and that was actually my word count goal for the month, so I wrote it twice as quickly as I thought I was going to. So I might finish the first draft sooner than I originally thought, because if you watched my last writing vlog, the first Solar Queen writing vlog, then you'll know that I'm giving myself 3 years for this project. I don't want it to take 10 years, but I also don't want to rush it, because these books, they really do need their time in order for me to do what I want to do with them. So I'm giving myself a year for drafting, a year for revision, and a year for editing. Obviously, that timeline can change. Maybe I'll draft in 6 months, maybe I'll revise in a year and a half. I don't know how it will go. I'm open and I'm flexible, but that's just kind of a guideline, just so I sort of know whether or not I'm on track. So at this rate, I will finish drafting in 6 months. That said, maybe not, because these first few scenes I had them mapped out for many, many years. I basically knew what the sequel was going to be. I think even before I finished the first book, I knew what the next book was going to be. So I've had years to think about this project, to daydream about this project, and I have daydreamed about it so much. So these first few scenes really wrote themselves. Even in that writing blog that I posted, I think I wrote like 4,000 words that day. I got the whole prologue done, which, like, that's a good writing day for me, especially if I'm vlogging as well. I mean, 4,000 words is a lot even if I'm not vlogging, but if I'm vlogging, it's like I'm really spending the whole day creating in some way, shape, or form. So things have really been flowing, things have been really easy, but there are some upcoming chapters that are probably not going to be as easy. It's because this book is multi-POV. Aurora and Luna, the first book, it was basically entirely from Aurora's perspective. I mean, not counting the prologue, it was entirely from Aurora's perspective. The prologue was from the perspectives of Sola, Zelina, and a third character that I will not mention, but the rest of the book was entirely from Aurora's perspective. This book, however, The Solar Queen, the prologue has two perspectives, Sola and Prince Daniel, and then the rest of the book has 5 other perspectives. Maybe 6, I'm not sure. Maybe 6, I haven't decided yet. We'll see, I'm gonna decide when I get there. But basically, it's from the perspective of Aurora, of course, and then also Zale, the rebel warlock, Aiden, the noble mage, Daisy, the high elf, and Skye, the fairy queen. I feel like anytime you make something multi-POV, you are often increasing your word count. Maybe not if all the characters are in the same space and they're kind of going through the same plots. Aurora's going through her own plot. Zale and Aiden, they're kind of going through their own plot, and they're also going through their own individual arcs. Daisy and Skye, they're also going through their own individual arcs, and Skye in particular, she kind of has like a whole other plot that's not completely separate, but like separate enough where it might add a lot of words. And even Daisy, I haven't fully decided what I'm doing with Daisy yet, or Skye for that matter, but yeah, basically everyone has their own thing going on, but it all ties together. And yeah, I think it's just gonna add a lot of words. It's funny because this is not how I originally pictured any of the books in the Sun and Moon Saga being. When I first came up with the idea for the series, I thought they would all just be from Aurora's perspective. I think because back then, my favorite book, it was any of the Harry Potter books, and those are basically all from Harry's perspective, with like the occasional chapter that's not from his perspective, or through someone else's perspective, and Harry has a dream about it or something like that. So I kind of envisioned this book being like that, where like Aurora was going to find out what was happening to the other characters by having like a dream, or like, so I don't know, just some way that like the information would come to her and we would experience their stories through her eyes. But I then realized that it was probably going to be a better book and a better series if in the second book the POV opened up and it became multi-POV. Everything is still limited, so it's like Game of Thrones. When I'm with Aurora, I'm only with Aurora. When I'm with Zale, I'm only with Zale. When I'm with Aiden, I'm only with Aiden. Just like how in Game of Thrones, when you're with Jon, you're only with Jon. When you're with Ned, you're only with Ned. It's not like a Lord of the Rings book where there's this narrator that is omniscient and knows everything and is just like telling you the story.
This isn't some Lord of the Rings book.
The Hobbit.
You're experiencing it through the character's perspective. It's just told in third person rather than first person. Why? I just don't really like first person that much. It's fine to read. I just don't really like writing it very much. I prefer third person. It's just a taste thing. So I would rather write in limited third than in first. And I would rather, for my books in the Sun and Moon Saga, I would rather write in limited third than omniscient third. With my fairy tales and my folklore, the tales of the Sun and the Moon, those are often in those are often in omniscient third because they're a fairy tale. And I enjoy writing in that point of view as well, but for this fantasy series, this very character-driven fantasy series, where I have these long arcs planned for all these characters of how they're going to change and how their perspective of the world is going to change and things they're going to endure and overcome, the challenges they're going to face. I think it's going to be more effective if it's third limited. Of course, this is why these next few chapters are going to be challenging maybe, is because Aurora's point of view is natural to me. She is a little bit of a self-insert character. She's kind of like a younger version of me, but she's also kind of like an idealized version of me because she is like very noble and heroic, and I would like to be like that, but realistically I don't know if I am. Like if I was put into some of the situations that Aurora's put in, I don't know what I would do. I'd like to think that I would act like her, but like when I say she's a self-insert, I'm not saying that I am as noble and heroic as her, because I'm skeptical that I would be. She's a self-insert in the sense that she sees the world very similarly to me. She has a very similar personality to me. I kind of picture her being an INFP. If you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, I use Myers-Briggs a lot for my characters. I know it's not scientific, but it's a helpful writing tool. She cares about animals. I'm a vegan. She's sensitive, so am I. She's introverted, so am I. She kind of feels like she's other, so do I. She's defiant, so am I. There's a lot of things we have in common. It's a very natural point of view to write in. I don't have to do a lot of thinking, like, what would Aurora think about this? I just kind of know. Writing from these other characters, however, it's a little bit different. When I was writing about them in the first book, about them from Aurora's perspective, that was easy enough because I can relate it back to sort of seeing these kinds of people and these kinds of personalities in the world and then thinking about how they made me feel, because the story was told through Aurora's perspective. But writing from their perspective, it's a whole other challenge. And I don't have nearly as much of an experience writing from these other characters' perspectives as I do Aurora, obviously. That's something that I'm going to have to overcome. And I am nervous for writing from all their perspectives, and that's basically what this vlog is going to be. It's going to be me reflecting on how it is to write from Zale, Aiden, Daisy, Skye, and finding my footing in that. Thus far, I have written from Sola's perspective and Prince Daniel's perspective in the prologue. Sola's was easy enough. Daniel's was a little more challenging. And then Aurora's super easy. And then a couple of days ago, I wrote a chapter from Zale's perspective, and that was a lot harder. I am a lot less certain of whether or not that chapter really landed the way that I hoped it would. Zale is a tricky one. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit, but for now what I'm going to do is charge up my camera, and I'm going to finish this drawing that I have been working on. I have been working on this illustration of Aurora running away from the Greenlandian castle and making her nightly escape into Secret Glade to visit her animal friends. I do have a soundscape of this on my YouTube channel, featuring a drawing of the same subject matter and another drawing, and then some ambient sounds and the song that Aurora sings in this scene in the book. This is from the first book, by the way, the very beginning of the first book, just at the beginning of chapter 1. I created this ambient soundscape a while back, like about 6 or 7 months ago, and at the time I was pretty happy with it, but it's been 6 or 7 months and I have worked a lot on my drawing, and I thought it would be fun to redraw it and recreate it because I knew I could do a better job of it, and I wanted to see that side-by-side comparison of how my drawing has come along. And yeah, this is about how far I am. I've got Aurora and the trees. I did the grass in pastels this time instead of in pencil crayon, just because I thought that would be more fun. I thought I did a better job at the castle and a better job of Aurora. And then we've got the moon over here, and then I've got the starry Prevado galaxy night sky background to finish. So I'm gonna do that now, and I'm gonna charge up my camera, and then I will talk to you more about what it was like to write from Zale's perspective. About an hour later, and I've only done about half of the sky. This is the Prevado galaxy, which is also known as the Magical Way, and this is a galaxy that I made up. And it's pink and purple and blue always. The night sky is always pink and purple and blue. So I actually have to go in there with 9 different pencil crayons, constantly changing the pencil crayons in order to properly draw the night sky in my fantasy world. I didn't get as much done today as I wanted to, but honestly, this nice, slow-paced approach to creating is exactly what my soul needs today. I was in like a funk these last few days, and I know that to get out of the funk, I very much need to like launch myself out of it and like throw myself into my creative work. But at the same time, when I'm in a depressive mode, sometimes pushing myself too hard or too quickly can backfire. So putting on some Lana Del Rey and singing along and slowly working on the background for this illustration, that was exactly the medicine that my soul needed today. I am not going to do any writing today. I woke up and I already knew that I was just going to want to read when I woke up. I read like 50 pages of Game of Thrones this morning because I am rereading the first 2 Game of Thrones books and then reading the rest of what is out, because I know that George R.R. Martin's writing will help me figure out how I want to do multi-POV. I really admire his writing craft. He is a talented dude. I really hope he finishes his books. But anyway, I knew that I wasn't going to want to like dive headfirst into my writing this morning. I knew that my soul was going to need some time sitting in my reading chair with a good book, something to feed my muse, re-spark that fire inside of me. I'm learning how to work with my own rhythm, with my own flow, with my own cycle. I'm learning when to push myself a little, I'm learning when to push myself a lot, and I'm learning when to just completely surrender and let go. So I'm glad I did some drawing today, even though normally I would like to be more productive creatively. I understand just from my knowledge of myself that sometimes I gotta just take it easy, because it is an important part of the creative cycle, number one, and also number two, I'm a human being and I just sometimes need to give myself some grace. So I'm not writing today, but I do want to chat with you about Zale, because I did write the first chapter from his point of view a few days ago. And yeah, so Zale, he is, I believe, an ISTJ, whereas Aurora is an INFP. So they're almost opposites. The only thing that Aurora and Zale really have in common is the fact that they're both introverted and reserved, and they both feel like outsiders, and I think that's why they get on together really quite quickly if you think about it. Like, yes, Aurora is a little bit cautious around him at first, but overall they do hit it off relatively quickly. They kind of understand each other because they both feel like outsiders, and I've been in relationships like that where you kind of bond together because you both feel different or other. I can write that part of Zale easily. The parts that are harder is how he differs from Aurora. So Zale is very much a rule-abiding person, whereas Aurora sneaking out of her castle home to run away into the woods against her parents' wishes. She's obviously not a rule-abiding person. Zale is a rule-abiding person, though. He likes to follow the rules. Yes, he's a rebel warlock. Yes, he's doing magic illegally, but he likes to follow the rules of the Coven that he's a part of. So while he doesn't like to follow society's rules, he does follow the rules of his Coven very, very religiously. That is kind of a hard POV for me to write. My boyfriend would be laughing at this because he thinks I'm a rule follower, and I am in the sense that I don't want to disrupt the harmony of things, but at the same time, the part of Zale's rule following that I have a hard time understanding is the fact that he's willing to follow the rules even when that disrupts the harmony of things. So for me, I'm happy to break the rules if it's like no one's gonna get hurt, the harmony's not gonna be disrupted, everyone's gonna be happy, more or less. Whereas Zale wants to stick to the rules even if it hurts other people, even if it disrupts the harmony, even if other people are unhappy. So that's tricky to write for me because there's almost like a militant side to this character, and I just don't relate at all. I am way too chaotic. Yeah, and then Zale's also just very practical. He thinks very practically. He's not the kind of person to like get too bogged down in daydreams. I mean, he does, but at the same time, it's sort of like he's got things he daydreams about. Childhood memories, future fantasies, but it's more like reviewing the past and looking towards a bright future. He's okay with the fact, usually, that he can't have these things right now, and he's willing to work hard right now. Whereas Aurora, she's a dreamer through and through, and she believes that she should be able to have her dream right now. She shouldn't necessarily have to work really hard and wait for it in the future. She should be able to have it right now. Not that she's like super entitled, but it's more that she's very idealistic, whereas Zale, I mean, in a sense, he has his nobility and his honor, but it's also kind of like, he's just not too idealistic. He kind of views the world a little more realistically in some ways. I mean, he still is idealistic in other ways. Of course, it depends on who you ask. It depends on which character you compare him to. Compared to Aurora, he's a lot more realistic. Compared to other characters, like this character named Cogsworth, Cogsworth literally calls Zale a ruddy dreamer. He's always calling him a ruddy dreamer. So that's the other thing about these kinds of character traits, is it's all relative to other characters. To me, Zale seems very practical and not that much of a daydreamer, but at the same time, I know he very much is a daydreamer in his own right, and he very much is an idealist in his own right. Yeah, it's very tricky to get this balance right. The other risk of all this is like, even when I know the motivations of the character through and through, I don't want to risk telling the reader too much what the characters are. I want to still show them the motivations more than tell them. That said, I am reading Game of Thrones right now, and George R.R. Martin does often have a bit of exposition at the beginning of most chapters. I've noticed that there usually is a bit of narration, kind of telling you what the characters think, what the characters feel, what their past is, what their hopes and fears are, but also it's like woven into showing, and it's woven into sensory description, and it's grounded in actual scenes, and it's just done very craftily. He really uses a lot of different elements at once, a lot of different writing techniques at once to make a very compelling chapter. So that's something I have to think about. Now, of course, I can worry about that more in revision and even more in line editing. On this first draft, I'm really just trying to get the bare bones of what each character is doing and what's going through their head. During revision, I can correct anything that seems wrong, like if I go too far with a certain trait, or if I don't lean into a certain trait enough, I can change the story as need be. And then on the line edit, I can change the language so it's told in the most effective way. So there's gonna be many rounds during which I can get this right, but at the same time, I do really want to try to get it right from the get-go, obviously. The other thing about Zale is that he's not always the most proactive character. I mean, he is proactive in the sense that he's responsible, but at the same time, he just kind of follows rules and he just kind of does what the higher-ups in his coven tell him to do. And he doesn't necessarily always think for himself. I don't think he's really comfortable thinking for himself the way Aurora is. That is kind of frustrating to read, especially given the context of the story. I don't want to spoil Aurora and Luna, so you'll just have to read it if you kind of want to know what I'm getting at here. But his chapters are going to be tricky to write. Like, he's with Aiden right now. They're together, they're interacting, and I think Aiden's chapters are going to be easier to write because Aiden's a very proactive character and he thinks for himself, or at least he tries to, and those chapters are going to be written in such a way that the reader is probably going to agree with and empathize with, whereas Zale's chapters are going to be a little bit harder to empathize with. And getting that right, like being true to the character, but also I don't want him to be a character that you just dislike automatically. Like, I just don't think that would be a very interesting story. In the first book, Zale is meant to become more unlikable as the story goes on. Some people didn't like him basically from the get-go, or stopped liking him like pretty early on, which is fine. Like, because I mean it probably means that you could sort of read between the lines, so that's good. Other people who have read it have said that they liked him initially and then they kind of started to question their liking of him as time went on. And that's kind of how I was writing it, although of course you can have whatever opinion you want to have. It's just because Zale has some growth to go through, and it's not that he's like a bad person, it's not that I want him to be bad or like unlikable completely, it's just he's got some flaws that he needs to work through. Getting that balance right is hard, and it's also just kind of hard to write from that perspective when my view on things is going to be more like Aurora's, and honestly more like Aiden's, even though like my personality is nothing like Aiden's. I just tend to agree more with Aiden on a lot of things than I do with Zale, and I obviously agree more with Aurora on things than I do with Zale. I really understand Zale, like from like if I was his psychiatrist or his therapist, I would really understand what's going through his head, but I feel like I'm still struggling to find Zale's voice. It's just something I think I have to write through, and I don't really know. I mean, maybe it's fine. Maybe I'll reread it and go, it's fine. If there is a problem, and I'm thinking there is, my gut tells me that there's something missing or that there's something off. I don't think I'm going to know what it is consciously until I'm done drafting and I'm reading through it and getting ready to do revisions. I might solve the problem over time unconsciously before then, and then like see the transition as I read through it, but yeah, I just can't quite put my finger on. Just something doesn't feel totally in place yet. It's just such a different personality and perspective on the world than I have. So it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. Prior to the Solar Queen, the only experience of writing from Zale's perspective that I have is writing that novelette, which is the events that happen in The Misfit Princess and the Rebel Coven from his perspective. I remember at that time kind of feeling similar. Like, I felt like I had good ideas, but I still haven't read through that work, so I don't really know how it reads. I remember feeling like I don't totally know how this is all landing. Like, there were some really romantic parts, and then there was some more serious parts, and it's sort of like, yeah, how do I like blend every aspect of Zale's personhood together in a narrative that's smooth and seemingly organic? We shall see. I'm also just like, I am, at this point in the story, Zale is very frustrating to me, and I think to most people who read it. I think, you know, you can expect to feel frustrated by Zale, and I greatly prefer Aiden right now. Just full disclosure, this feels like dark secrets. When I was writing Aurora and Luna, when I was revising it, most of the time I preferred Zale, and then there would be times where I'd be like, do I like Aiden more? But then when I was doing the line edit, the last sort of developmental edit that I did while line editing, because I had like a shift in perspective on human beings, human behavior, psychology, what humans were capable of. I decided to make Zale more rigid, and I decided to embed more conflict between him and Aurora throughout Aurora and Luna, and have that conflict grow more and more as the story went on. That was already there, but it wasn't as prominent. It was more like, you know, they'd butt heads occasionally, but all in all, they were on the same page. During the line edits, because my perspective on humanity had changed, for reasons I won't get into here, I had decided to change Zale and I guess make him less of what was really just wish fulfillment, and make him more of like a real character with real flaws. And then those conflicts between him and Aurora, they became not just like little moments to add tension to the love triangle, but like pretty big moments of conflict. And this frustration, it feels like a lot to recover from, if he is going to recover from it. I don't know. I have a lot of cool stuff planned for Zale in the future. A lot of things that I want him to learn magically, things that I want him to do, quests I want him to go on. Like, I want this character to stay in the main characters, and I want him to be someone that you could at least somewhat like, but right now things are not looking good for him. And contrasting that, Aiden is just, I think he's just going to be so much easier to write, so much more relatable, so much more proactive. We shall see. I hope all this made sense. I will talk to you after I've drafted the first Aiden chapter, because I believe that's coming next. I think I have one more chapter, or maybe two more chapters. Yeah, I think there's actually going to be 2 chapters from Aurora's perspective coming next. And then it'll be a chapter from Aiden's perspective. And then I don't know what's coming after that, but eventually there'll be a chapter from Daisy's perspective, and then eventually a chapter from Skye's perspective. So I will talk to you after I have finished each of those. So it's been a couple of weeks since I last filmed. I had quite a few Luna chapters back to back, so I had to get all of those written before I could film anything for this particular vlog. I just finished Aiden's first chapter. Aiden is one of, if not my favorite characters, so I was really looking forward to writing this chapter. Part of me wonders if I want to insert this Aiden chapter earlier, but I don't really know if I can. Writing from multiple POVs is hard and challenging, but super fun, but also challenging and confusing. Like, that was a lot of Luna chapters all in a row, but also Luna is still very much the center of gravity of this book, even though there are gonna be at least 4 other perspectives. So I think it's fine that there was a lot of chapters from Luna just all sandwiched together. And also, Luna is going through a lot, and there was a lot to kind of get established for her point of view. there'll be spoilers for Aurora and Luna, the first book in the series, from this point on, so if you want to read it without it having been spoiled, please click away, click the link in my description, go buy your copy of Aurora and Luna. I had to establish Luna's relationship, if you could call it that, with Prince Daniel. Had to get her settled into the Solar Castle, settled into living as Lady Rose Red Leo. And then there's also 2 new characters that are not, well, one of them is not mentioned at all in the first book. The other one is like mentioned very, very briefly, but he's not on the page at all. Both of those characters had to get introduced. And then of course, I've got to kind of establish what other characters that we already knew about, like Emperor Sola and Prince Daniel, are more like behind closed doors. I couldn't have a large time jump between these chapters. I think I went Luna, Zale, Luna, Aiden. I couldn't go Luna, Zale, Luna, Aiden, because this Aiden chapter, I wrote it at a certain point in time, but all of this stuff for Luna had to happen before that. So if I were to write one of those Luna chapters after the Aiden chapter, I would have had to either write it retroactively, like Luna's reflecting on those things, and I didn't want to do that because I wanted these chapters to be, I wanted them to be actual scenes that played out, and I also don't want to write it out of order because that's just going to be confusing for the reader. I do a little bit of out of order storytelling sometimes, like the prologue to the Solar Queen is actually set during the time of Aurora and Luna, so it's set before the ending of Aurora and Luna. So sometimes I'll do a little bit of out of order, I can't say that, oh my god, out of order storytelling, but I don't want to do too much, and I just figured, okay, if you're reading the Solar Queen, presumably you've read Aurora and Luna, so you've just read a whole 175,000 words from Luna's perspective, aside from the prologue, so you're probably okay with having 3 chapters from her perspective all sandwiched together. That's probably fine. Also, I think I mentioned in the previous clip that I was ahead in terms of plot points. So I had written more content in terms of hitting more plot points in like a smaller amount of words, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's no longer the case. Now I'm like, I think I'm right on ratio. I have a certain plot point I want to get to by the fall equinox, which is when I'll kind of take a breather, take a week off from writing and creating, and just do a bunch of reading, do a bunch of gaming, like really just pour into myself. I take about a week off like that every quarter, every time the seasons shift. That's just kind of what I do. I find that to be a really essential practice for not just resting and getting inspired again, but also reconnecting with my motivations for creating and for writing this series. I think because we're about to have Lammas, which is the seasonal cross quarter between summer and fall, so we're halfway to Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, and I'm over halfway to my goal. So I've been making really good progress with this project, which is great, and I just created, like from my main outline, I just created a more chapter specific outline to get me to that plot point and to that word count that I want to get to by the autumn equinox. I want to hit 50,000 words by then. I'm just over 30,000 words, and I also have a very specific plot point that I want to get to by then. So I created a more in-depth outline when I finished my writing session today of how I want to organize and structure the chapters to get there. So I'm gonna be writing another Luna chapter after this, and then I think I'll get to the first Daisy chapter, and then the first Queen Skye chapter, and then finally another Zale chapter, and then back to Luna, and maybe an Aiden chapter thrown in there somewhere. I don't know. It's all fluid and not set in stone and subject to change, but I think I have it figured out, and I think I can get through all the plot points I need to get to in the word count that I have before I'm gonna hit this one sort of major plot point that I need to hit. All that is kind of confusing, I think, the way that I worded it, but it does make sense to me. I hope it makes sense to you. Basically, I think I'm on track with this project all in all, but figuring out the details of getting where I'm going, there's a little bit of uncertainty with that. That's just kind of how writing is, at least for me. Because even with an outline, I'm still discovery writing. I'm still kind of making things up as I go to some extent. Of course, I do know where I'm going, but I don't always know how I'm getting there. And thus far, I have added 2 scenes that I wasn't expecting to add. The first I might just get rid of. I don't know if it's really needed. I don't know if it really makes sense. But while I was writing, I felt like it should be there, so I just quickly wrote it in. That added another 1,000 or 2,000 words that I wasn't planning. When I get to the developmental edits, I'll decide if it really adds something to the story or if it just takes away from it. I'm gonna let future Melody deal with that. Similarly, in the chapter I was just writing, I was trying to limit myself to 3,000 words, and then I got to the end of those 3,000 words, and I got to the end of the chapter, or so I thought. Then I realized that, because basically Aiden has to leave the Coven, go off, find some secluded place to build a campfire, and then put these dragon eggs on the campfire so that they don't catch cold. But first he had to ask Selena for permission to leave the Coven. Originally, I had thought that the chapter would end with Selena, with Zale and Aiden having their conversation. That would be the chapter. But then I realized that Aiden would go off right then to go and build this fire to put the dragon eggs on. Like, he wouldn't wait a day. Like, he's already waited a couple of days in this Coven, and the dragon eggs can only go so long without fire. So, like, he wouldn't, and he's not like a patient person. He's not a lazy person. There's no reason why he would wait. He would do it right then. And that was a scene that I definitely wanted to show you and not just have Aiden sort of tell you about retroactively. So I had to write it right then. So that added like another 1,000 or 2,000 words that I wasn't expecting to write. I had to write it right then because the next chapter is a Lunar chapter, and it's the next day, that chapter, so, or another day in the future, so theoretically afterwards Aiden would have already gone out and put the dragon eggs on the fire at least once, if not multiple times. So this is why multi-POV and like writing multiple plots at once that all have to kind of work together, it's confusing and it's challenging, but it's like challenging in the best way possible, because this is the kind of challenge I feel I really need right now to, well, write this book that I've been wanting to write for like, what was it, like 7 years? Yeah, 7 years. But also it's the challenge I need to like level up as a writer, because this is the kind of story I like to tell. It's the kind of story I like to consume. As you'll see, I just bought these beautiful leather-bound editions of Game of Thrones. That's the kind of story I like. I really like a plot that's just very like hooky, and there's lots of things going on, and you're wondering how they connect, and like you as the reader or the viewer get to make those connections. So this is the kind of story I really like to tell, and I do really want to up-level my skills as a writer and as a storyteller as I write this. So it's challenging to figure out when to use each POV and how to structure everything, how to lay everything out. It's a whole new challenge. Writing from Aurora's perspective in Aurora and Luna, it was like the plot was relatively straightforward, because aside from the prologue, I was always in Aurora's mind, and it was just always obvious what was going to happen next. It was obvious where the story would go next and how Aurora would be feeling about it. But now I have more plot lines, and I have more psyches. It's more complicated, but I'm really enjoying the challenge, so I'm happy to be writing this book. But I think I'm getting to that point in the project where I'm like, I'm feeling the heat. So as I said, I am rereading A Song of Ice and Fire right now, Game of Thrones. I'm on A Clash of Kings, just getting into it. Loving these beautiful leather-bound Bible-like editions. They're so easy to read and hold, and they feel like they're actually gonna last, unlike my mass market paperbacks that I had before. Worth every penny. But anyway, one thing that George R.R. Martin does that I'm really observing with this read-through is he'll start a chapter usually with a little bit of narration. You're either getting introduced to the character for the first time, or you're getting caught up on what's been going on for them. And I think that narration, while like sometimes it can feel a bit like telling, I think it works really, really well in the context of something like A Song of Ice and Fire, because it allows for days or weeks to pass and for a lot to happen in that time without it having to actually be on the page happening. It can be the character remembering it or reflecting on it. If everything in this book was dramatized and shown as an actual scene, the book would be like this big. So I think it's good because it keeps his word count lower. I know it's still a high word count, but it keeps it lower than it would have been. So this is something that I'm kind of observing as I'm reading this, and then I'm trying to do in my own way as I write the Solar Queen. Like, not like I'm trying to copy him and be exactly like George R.R. Martin. It's more just like I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to up-level my skills as a writer and establish my own style. So I'm sort of borrowing from him in the sense that I'm using narration in clever ways so that I can get through things that maybe don't need to be shown to you through dramatization more quickly, so that I can get to those scenes that are really important that I do dramatize. But finding this balance is tricky. So yeah, it's sort of like, what do you show versus what do you tell? The balance wasn't as important with Aurora and Luna. In fact, with Aurora and Luna, I did a lot of edits, making it so it was more showing and less telling. I know my style still kind of leans on tell quite a lot sometimes, but showing instead of telling was something that I was really working on for quite a while, and I'm still working on it. But right now, weirdly enough, I think I'm learning how to tell instead of show, but tell in a way that's very effective. And part of that is knowing when to tell instead of when to show. The transitions between scenes, they don't always have to be these big, dramatic, detail-filled things. Sometimes you can get through those sort of more mundane transitions in a line or two, maybe with one detail, or maybe relying on the details that you've established earlier in the chapter or earlier in the book. This is something that I'm still learning, how to tell well and how to show well as well. That was a lot of wells. And how to know when to do which tool, because they're both just tools at the end of the day. One isn't really superior to the other, they both have their place. So I just finished Aiden's chapter. It was like 4,000 words, and I had a really fun time with it, I'm not gonna lie. As I said, Aiden is one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character, and he's just really easy to write. Zale was a little harder to write when I was first writing him. Well, not when I was first writing him, but in some of my later edits for Aurora and Luna, I did give Zale more depth, and then he got a little harder to write for a while, whereas Aiden has just always been easy to write. Throughout the entirety of writing Aurora and Luna, he was just easy, and he's still proving to be easy. That chapter, it was pretty easy. Like, the hardest part was the structure and the pacing, because there was a lot to pack in and I didn't want it to be like 8,000 words, but knowing how he's feeling, what he's thinking, all of that just comes so naturally to me with him. I really like him. He's not perfect, especially when you first get introduced to him, but spoilers once again. By the end of Aurora and Luna, I do think that he has changed a lot as a person. Aiden is one of these characters that, like in fiction, I tend to gravitate towards the Aidens, because a character like Aiden is a very different kind of person than I am, and a very different kind of person than someone that I'd be in a relationship with, or someone that I'd even be friends with. They're just so different than who I normally surround myself with. As you can probably tell, I am a very bookish person, I'm an introverted person, I'm a nerd. I like to stay at home and be cozy and read my books and play my video games and write my stories and sketch in my sketchbook. I'm not bold and adventurous and daring. I mean, maybe I'm selling myself a little short here, but like, I'm not that kind of out person. I'm more of an in person. I'm a lot more cautious than someone like Aiden. I really enjoy writing Aiden, and I really enjoy fiction where there's a character that's kind of like Aiden in this way, when they are like really like out and bold and impulsive, and they're so different than me, and they're so different than the kind of person that I actually would want to be in a relationship with or would want to be close friends with, that it's just like really nice escapism. It's something different. It's really cool to like be writing Aiden and to be going, like not just writing him and not just having him on the page like I did in Aurora and Luna, but to now be going into his psychology, into his mind, to be writing his thoughts, his feelings, his inner world. It's really fun. I think this is probably the point of view that I'm the most excited to write in this book. So I think when I talked about Zale, I told you his Myers-Briggs and his Enneagram. If I didn't, I'll just say it now. Zale is an ISTJ. He's an Enneagram type 6. Aiden is an ESFP. He's almost the exact opposite of Zale, because the only letter they share is an S. He's extroverted, sensing, feeling, perceiving, whereas Zale is introverted, sensing, thinking, judging. With the Enneagram, he is a 7. So while Zale is serious and at times moody and just basically your stereotypical emo boy, Aiden is fun-loving and impulsive and confident and kind of cocky and like overconfident and impulsive and a bit reckless, and they just really contrast each other in a way that I have a lot of fun with. I had a lot of fun with that when writing Aurora and Luna, and I'm still having a lot of fun with it as I write the Solar Queen. Yeah, and it's fun to write something that's so different from me. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's like weird wish fulfillment. Maybe I want to be more like Aiden, or maybe I wish that someone like Aiden would be taking more of an interest in me. Someone like Aiden would probably find me very, very boring, because I wouldn't be going out on adventures. I'd be staying in the Shire, drinking tea and reading books. So, I don't know, maybe it's like wish fulfillment that someone like that notices me. I don't know. I'm just really enjoying it. There's not much to say. There's not really any struggles with his point of view, at least none that I'm aware of. Maybe I'll find some in revision, but that first chapter came very, very naturally. The hardest thing was just getting the pacing right, and at the end, tacking on that extra scene. I'm probably gonna have to embellish that scene in revision to make it more detailed and have more meat there. That's a weird analogy to use as a vegetarian. So maybe I'll divide that chapter into 2 chapters. I don't know. Oh, drafting is so messy. My goal for this week is to get through the next Luna chapter. So that'll be another 3,000 words or so. Maybe it'll be more. I'm hoping I can limit it to 3,000 words, but there is a lot to pack in there, so we'll see. I want to get through that because basically during my work week, like my mundane job, my day job, I always write in the morning before my day job, and I don't really have time to vlog right after. I could vlog in the evening, I suppose, but if I'm doing these writing vlogs, I kind of like to do them right after I've done my session or while I'm taking a break from my session. So they're best done on the weekend. So my goal is to spend my writing sessions before my day job this week to getting Luna's chapter drafted so that by the time it's next weekend, I can write hopefully Daisy and Skye's chapters and vlog about them to you. So if all goes well, I will talk to you in another week. Of course, you'll be seeing it right after this clip ends, so it will just be a couple of seconds for you, but it'll be a week for me. Before I jump to the next clip, I just want to update you on my drawing, because I think 2 weeks ago, I was still working on this drawing, and it's all finished now, and I still haven't scanned it, but that is because I have another drawing that I need to finish, and then I'll scan both of them, and then I'm gonna make something very magical with the both of them. I can't remember if I told you about that in the previous clip. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Obviously there's things that I would love to improve upon, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. This is a redraw of an earlier drawing. I think Aurora looks a lot better, and I love that I used pastel for the grass. I think that adds some texture. I also think the castle is better, and I made these trees a little bit lighter because they're under the light of the moon. I'm still loving the moon and the starry background, and all in all, I'm really happy with this. Of course, I'm still a beginner, and there's still so many things I would love to improve, but all in all, I'm pretty proud of this one. That one I've finished, and now I have started another drawing, which kind of goes with it. I'm done all the, well, most of like the line work. I've still got a lot of bushes to do, like this one, and that's going to be very long and tedious, so I'll probably just put on a good audiobook or a good podcast or something while I do that. And then of course I need to go and color it all in. All in all, I'm pretty happy with how this is going. I feel like some of the proportions are a little odd, like maybe her head's a bit too big compared to his, I don't know. I think the animals could be done a little bit better, but like maybe once I've shaded them in, I'll be happier with them. I love the roots that I've done for the tree. This is also a redraw, by the way. I'm redrawing something I drew like 6 months ago. So I gave the tree more detail. I gave it roots, which I love. Another change I made is I added the sun, whereas before I just used a pastel to shine some sunlight down, and I will still probably do that at the end, but I wanted to actually put the sun in, just like I have the moon in the other picture, because this is the Sun and Moon Saga, so it felt like if these pictures are gonna kind of go together in a set as two halves of one project, there should be a moon in the first picture and a sun in the second. Let's now, if all goes according to plan, jump a week ahead in the future. I just finished writing Daisy's first chapter, sort of. Midway through the chapter, I decided to shift to Aiden's perspective because I impulsively started to write a plot point that wasn't in my outline. I've gone off my outline a few times since starting this project, and it has made the word count a little bit longer than what I originally anticipated, but that's okay. That's why in my original estimate I was aiming for no more than 200,000 words, because that would give me like another 100,000 words to play with, because I don't want the book to be any longer than 300,000 words by the time it's done. And I mean, in an ideal world it would be shorter than that. That's just kind of where I'm anticipating it might land at its maximum, hopefully. Although I am wanting it to be shorter, of course, because I think shorter, if you can do it shorter and have it be just as effective, well, then it's probably just going to be more effective, although not always, of course. Anyway, I originally wanted to have the first draft be no more than 200,000 words. That was because I thought in the first draft I would stick very loyally to the outline. But there's been a few times where I've strayed from that, and at first I felt like I was doing something wrong because I have this outline, but then I realized, okay, well, if you didn't write this in now, you would be writing it in developmental edits, so it would just be more work to do later, and also you might forget this idea that you have right now. So basically, I am moving through my outline, and I'm trying to stick to my outline, but if I get an idea that is exciting and inspiring to me and really just feels right, just feels like how the characters would act, I'm writing it anyways, even if it means that I'm going over the word count. But I'm trying to make sure that when I am going over the word count, it's because I'm actually coming up with new plot point ideas that are exciting and interesting and authentic to the characters, and not just because I'm meandering and digging myself into dead ends and corners and holes and just ruminating in the character's head for too long. Because I do that sometimes. I am just taking a break to make some chai tea on the stove. Because I'm running low on chai tea bags, and also making tea on the stove is just super delicious, surprisingly delicious, and it's cozy and it makes the whole house smell like chai tea. And although it is only the very beginning of August, I'm definitely already getting into that fall mood. In a sense, autumn is always in my heart, but I don't know, this year I'm feeling it early, so I'm drinking a lot of chai tea. Yeah, 2 tea bags should be good. Do you like my little tea case? It says time for tea. I love the mismatched fonts and the little doodles. So cute. I got this at the dollar store. I started writing Daisy's chapter. It actually went surprisingly well. I had a lot of ideas about what Daisy might be thinking or feeling. I just didn't expect it to flow so easily because, I mean, it's not like I don't feel somewhat close with Daisy. I do, but I still don't feel like I understand her the way that I understand Aurora, Zale, and Aiden, just because I wrote tons and tons of chapters from, well, not from all their perspectives, but with them in those chapters. I mean, both Aurora and Zale are in pretty much the entirety of Aurora and Luna, and then Aiden is in the second half, so there's a lot of content. I hate that word, but I just used it. There's a lot of content that involves those three, and I really kind of have their psychology down. I have their dynamics down, both as a trio and also Aiden and Aurora, Aiden and Zale, Aurora and Zale. So those three are really easy to write. So writing Zale and Aiden's chapters, they came pretty naturally. And I expected Daisy's to be harder because I haven't written very much from her perspective, and I haven't really written very much about her at all. She just kind of enters at the end of Aurora and Luna, and then the book ends pretty quickly after that. So there's not as much time with her as there is with the other characters. So I didn't really know what it would be like to write from her perspective. And I also didn't and still don't totally know what I'm doing with her. By the way, when you make chai tea on the stove, you basically put tea bags in water in a pot, and then you put a bunch of spices in, like cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, all that kind of stuff. And then you just boil it, bring it to a boil, and then let it simmer. And it makes the house smell amazing, and it makes really delicious tea. Like really delicious tea. Way better than the bag stuff, honestly. My cinnamon, my ginger, my nutmeg, my cloves, my cardamom. Oh, I need black pepper. Okay, so yeah, I still don't totally know what I'm doing with Daisy, but I did start to get some ideas as I was writing her first chapter and as I was kind of sinking into her perspective. I started to understand what she would be thinking and feeling in that situation on a deeper level than I did before, and then I started to get some ideas of what I could do with her, not just in the grand scheme of things, but like in this book. What could happen in this book? And I still don't totally know, but I have some ideas. So in a sense, I am kind of discovery writing Daisy and Skye's chapters. I know what I'm doing with Aurora. I know what I'm doing with Zale. I know what I'm doing with Aiden. With Daisy and Skye, I know where they're at, and I know what they're thinking and feeling, and I know what they want, and I know what they're afraid of, but I still don't really know what I'm going to do with them in this book entirely. Like, I am very much discovery writing these characters, and I think that's okay, because as good as it is to have an outline for this book, I do a lot of my best work when I'm discovery writing. That's why I prefer to discovery write things when I can, or at least sometimes I prefer to. But with this book, because there's this big overarching plot, like, I can't just fly by the seat of my pants on everything. I need some kind of structure. Otherwise, it's just going to become chaos and madness, and it's going to become like impossible to edit. I can just feel it. Every time I've tried discovery writing this book in the past, and I think I've tried about 3 times, I've always gone, oh my god, like, I've already written 100,000 words and gotten nowhere with the main plot. It's just become very apparent to me that editing it would be more of a headache than editing Aurora and Lunar was. And if you're familiar with my story, you know that I took that book through like 10 rounds of editing. 5 of those were developmental edits, at least 5. So 5 of those were me really figuring out the story and piecing it together like it was this deranged puzzle that I had created for myself. And every time I've tried to discovery write this book in the past, I've gotten the sense that discovery writing is not the way to write this book, and that I need an outline because I need some kind of structure so that I don't go totally off script and just write myself into some crazy place that isn't even where I was supposed to go and then have to go and fix it. Like, I am outlining this project. That said, there are aspects of it that I'm discovery writing, absolutely. And I love discovery writing. I love both outlining and discovery writing. I like to dance between the two. I think that's okay. So yeah, I don't totally know what I'm doing with Daisy yet, but I have some ideas, and I'm really enjoying writing her. Well, I really enjoyed writing from her perspective. I wasn't expecting to halfway through the chapters switch to Aiden's perspective, but I also wasn't expecting this plot point that I added in at the last moment to be there. And as soon as I had the idea for this plot point, I realized, ooh, it would make more sense to now jump to Aiden's perspective. And this also kind of works because, well, originally I thought the first chapter from each character should be entirely from their perspective, and then later on you can jump around mid-chapter once you've really established that their perspective. But in the back of my mind, it's been nagging at me that the second half of Skye's chapter might be from Zale's perspective. So me coming up with this new plot point where then I felt like I had to jump to Aiden's perspective during the second half of Daisy's chapter, it's kind of nice because it kind of mirrors Skye's chapter where we're going to jump to Zale's perspective midway through. I hope that makes sense. So it kind of works in a weird way. It's not my original vision, but I think I like it more. Okay, now things have been brought to a boil. I'm just going to give this a good stir. I'm going to have a little taste. Of course, the flavors don't really come together until it's simmered for a little while, but I just want to see if I need any more spices. I'm just going to wait for this to cool down, otherwise I'll scald my tongue. Daisy's chapter, or this part of the chapter that was from Daisy's perspective, it went well. It flowed pretty easily. It was pretty heavy on telling for the first couple pages. That's good. That's good. I think though, I'm gonna sweeten it a little bit. I might add more spices. Yeah, it does lean pretty heavy on telling, but this also ties in with something that I was reflecting on yesterday when I was reading more of A Clash of Kings, the second Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones novel.
George R. R. Martin, he usually starts the chapter with like a little bit of narration, either to introduce you to the character or kind of update you on what's been going on with them, and then there's dramatization. So it starts off with a bit of telling, and then it gets into showing and it gets into an actual scene, and I really like this.
That said, I also really like, because I was re-listening to the Harry Potter audiobooks and I was listening to this amazing podcast called Binge Mode. They go through so many different things, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones. I'm going through Binge Mode Harry Potter for the second time now, and then I'm listening to the Harry Potter audiobook, and then I'm listening to the Binge Mode podcast that corresponds with those chapters. Anyway, I also really like the way the Harry Potter books are written. I mean, J.K. Rowling does use a lot of narration as well, but I like that closeness that you have with Harry. I mean, in the first book, the POV is a little wonky during Quidditch and stuff like that, but I digress. I guess, like, how I was feeling is that, like, I really like the way that George R. R. Martin approaches the multi-POV, but I still want Aurora's chapters to read the way they did in Aurora and Luna. So I want you to feel closer with Aurora than you do with any of the other characters, even though they all have chapters from their perspectives, just because I want you to spend more time with Aurora. So I guess I want it to read like an amalgamation of the two. I'm just going to use Harry Potter and Game of Thrones as an example just because they're very popular books. I'm not saying that like they're the best books and like they're my only inspirations, but they're just books that you are more likely to have read than other books that do the same thing. So I want it to read more like you're reading a Harry Potter book and you get Harry chapter, Harry chapter, Harry chapter, but then you get one Hermione chapter that kind of shows you some things that you couldn't see from the Harry chapter. And then you get two more Harry chapters. And then you get a Ron chapter. And then maybe you get a Neville chapter. Like, it's like if Harry Potter and Game of Thrones had a baby in that way. That's what I'm going for. So with these other POVs, Zale, Aiden, Daisy, and Skye, I want to use more narration than I do with Aurora. Now with Aurora there will still be narration because this book is going to cover a long span of time, and to do that I'll need to kind of time jump and give some narration, like winter came, snow covered the kingdom, you know what I mean? Like I'll have to kind of use my words powerfully in a way where we can go over like a month, you know, just in one sentence to show that a month has passed, or rather tell that a month has passed. But at the same time, I do want those Luna chapters to be more reliant on having lots and lots of scenes, and there'll probably be more Luna chapters back to back, whereas the other chapters I want them to kind of be thrown in. You'll get Luna, then you'll get Zale, then you'll get Luna, then you'll get Aiden, then you'll get Luna, then you'll get Daisy, then you'll get Luna, then you'll get Daisy again. That's not actually the order of how it goes, but you know what I mean. I want you to be still closest with Luna, but now you're also going into the minds of these other characters as well. So I'm taking inspiration from A Song of Ice and Fire, but I'm doing it in my own way. I guess I'm kind of blending it with the way that I wrote Aurora and Luna, the first book in my series, which was admittedly very inspired by Harry Potter. Finding my voice and finding my structure and finding just how I want to write the story, it'll take a little bit of practice. I don't think I'll fully know if I'm doing it right until I've already written the first draft and I'm reading through it and making notes for revision. I've never written a novel like this before. I've never written a novel that's multi-POV. I've written from third person omniscient, but I've never written one that's like multi-POV. I've written short stories that are multi-POV, but never a novel. I've written third person limited, first person, third person omniscient, but I've never written a novel in third person multi-POV, and I've never written a novel in second person. I have written short stories with both of those perspectives, but never an entire novel. So it's a learning curve, just kind of figuring out what to even write, because it kind of feels like the possibilities are open and endless, and I could just show you like every detail of all of these characters' lives, and I can't do that if I want it to be a book that you're actually gonna have the patience to sit and read, maybe, you know what I mean? So it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. I put a lot of detail into the first book. I packed a lot of detail in there, and I still want to do that, especially in the Lunar chapters, and I even want to do that in the other chapters, but I have to also be selective, because I really want to keep the first draft under the 200,000 word mark, but especially I need to keep it under 300,000 words, like otherwise it's just gonna be enormous, you know? Something fun about writing from Daisy's perspective is Daisy is a high elf, so in my world the high elves are earthlings. They traveled from New Camelot, from planet Earth, whereas the low elves are native to New Camelot. They're completely different races, but they do have a lot of similarities, but they look very different. Low elves are short, they're more like Christmas elves, I guess. They're short, they have red hair, they have freckles, they have pale skin, whereas high elves are sort of average height, and they have green hair, green skin. They both have long pointy ears, they're both connected to nature, they can both speak the woodland tongue, they're both good at herbalism and all that kind of elven forest stuff, but they look very, very different. But Daisy, even though she is a high elf, she has green hair and green skin, she is convinced that she is a low elf, and this is because, well, this is all spoilers for Aurora and Luna, but it doesn't spoil that much. She was raised by low elves, so she considers herself a low elf. And she is in utmost denial that she is actually a high elf, even though the characters around her, such as Zale and Aiden, are telling her she's not a low elf, she's a high elf. She's like, no, I am a low elf. And that is a fun perspective to write from, because it's very, would you say it's neurotic? Like, she's just in such denial, and it's such blatant denial. Like, she knows logically that she's lying to herself, and yet she just won't look at the truth. And I don't think I've ever written a character that is that aware of the truth and yet chooses to be unaware of the truth. Like, I have written from the perspective of lots of people who self-deceive, but it's usually masked much more cleverly, whereas with her, like, all she has to do is like look at her hand, literally, like in the chapter I just wrote, a fairy lands on her hand and she's looking at it and she sees her green hand and she's like, oh, I hate my green hand. But she just has so much hatred for being an earthling, because the natives, the species that are native to New Camelot, they hate earthlings because the earthlings took over their land. She has so much like hatred for herself for being an earthling because she was raised by these New Camelot natives, these low elves. Instead of being honest with herself that she is actually a high elf, that she's an earthling, she's like, no, I'm a low elf. And to write a character with that much denial is, yeah, it's really fun, because I thought it was going to be more challenging than it was. I found it more fun than challenging. Maybe when I go and do my developmental edit, it'll be like, oh, this isn't working. I gotta figure out how to write this more convincingly. I don't know. But I was having a lot of fun with that. I'm gonna have another sip of this and see how it's coming together. I feel like it could use more spices, more ginger. Today is one of those days where I am just in my comfy zone, comfortable clothes, hair tied up, and I am just focusing. I am just sitting butt down in chair and writing, and that's pretty much all I'm doing today is writing and vlogging, and hopefully I'll have some time to do some reading afterwards or relax in some other way, but today is very much a focus day for me. I wrote 3,000 words this morning, which is already a lot. Like if I stopped there, that would already be a really great writing day, but I'm not gonna stop because I took the last 3 days, not just off of writing this project, but just off of creating in general. I got really busy. Well, first off, I got really burnt out and I needed to just take a morning off and just read, which I don't usually do, but I might do that more often going forward because I'm really learning, as you can probably tell by my series of vlogs that I've posted in this last year or so. I'm really learning how to not overdo it. So I took a morning off to read, and then I had my staff party. So the next day I was kind of out of commission. And then yesterday I was still feeling very out of sorts. I'm the kind of person where if I go out and I socialize and I drink, I don't usually drink. I know I have a bunch of alcohol back there, but I don't really drink. I do like making the odd cocktail, but I'm usually kind of like I have one and that's it. But I had a lot to drink the other night, which is not like me, but like there's just exceptions where I will drink, like staff parties, because you know you've been working hard and it's fun to kind of let loose with your coworkers and see everyone in that different kind of light. But yeah, I was out of commission for about 2 days. Not like hungover, but just tired. I usually go to bed before midnight, and I was up till like 2 in the morning the night of the staff party, and just all the socializing. Yeah, I was kind of out of it for 2 days, but yesterday I had a really good day inside, being cozy, learning about human design, knitting this pair of elven slippers that I'm knitting, reading A Song of Ice and Fire, taking a bath, watching Harry Potter. I just had like a really good self-care day yesterday, so today I'm like ready to write. And one thing that I'm learning about myself, because I'm a human design projector, I'm learning that I work best in these like very intense, inspired bursts, and it's okay if I take a day or 2 or even 3 to rest, because I will come back ready to go and I can get a lot done in that time. Like I've already written 3,000 words and I think I'm gonna at least double that. My goal for the day is actually kind of crazy. I want to get all of the POVs introduced by the end of the day. So I need to finish this chapter, which is no longer from Daisy's perspective, it's from Aiden's, but I need to finish it, and then I need to write Skye's first POV chapter. Halfway through it'll switch to Zale, but I don't have to write that today. I could write that another day. I just want to get Skye's first POV in there. I want to get all the characters done. I want to finish this enormous vlog. One thing about this vlog project that I have realized is that I don't really like doing vlogs that are time sensitive in a sense. Like, what I mean by this is I liked the idea for this vlog of drafting the first POV chapter of each character and then after drafting it immediately vlogging about it. It's been really fun and I've enjoyed it, and I'm grateful to have documented it because it's kind of my opportunity to do that, right? But at the same time, what it's meant is it's kind of interfered with my writing schedule, because it's meant that I've almost had to time drafting these first POV chapters with my days off, and not just my days off, but my time alone in the apartment, because I do live with my boyfriend who is in the bedroom right now, which I'm grateful for because it means I can film this. Because if I finished, let's say, Daisy's first POV chapter right before I had to go to work, because I usually write in the morning before work, that means that I can't vlog about it right after because I've got to go to work. And it's just, yeah, once that writing session is done in the morning before work, it's kind of like that song by Pink Floyd, the one that's like from Dark Side of the Moon. It's kind of just like, let's go. Like, gotta brush my teeth, gotta comb my hair, gotta pack my bag. Like, there's no time to vlog. So it's meant that I've had to time these writing sessions with my days off, which has been okay for right now. But as I get more and more into this project, I want to run with it more and more, and I don't want to feel limited. I don't want to feel like I have to wait to write so I can vlog right after. Like, I still want to vlog it, but I want the writing to be prioritized over the vlogging. So I don't think this is how I'm gonna structure my vlogs going forward. Didn't really realize that this would be an issue until I was already in the thick of it, and as I said, I am grateful to have filmed this vlog because now I'll have it forever, and it was kind of my opportunity to film it. But going forward, I'm gonna structure them slightly differently and also keep them shorter. They'll still be long because I talk a lot, but they'll be shorter than this one, that's for sure. I'm gonna see if this is ready. So what you do once you've let it simmer and it's kind of tasting how you're wanting it to taste is you just pour it through a strainer into your teapot. I love this teapot, by the way. It was my grandmother's, Country Rose. And it is the inspiration, by the way, for Elaine's Summer Rose teapot or tea set that Aurora sees when she goes to Rebel Cottage in the first book. I've got this adorable matching milk pitcher. I'm just gonna fix myself a nice cup of stovetop brewed chai and then tuck this under the tea cozy. And I'm gonna get back to writing. The next time I talk to you, I should be finished writing Skye's first POV chapter. Well, I may not be finished the chapter because the chapter's gonna end with Zale's POV, but I will have written from Skye's POV for the first time in The Solar Queen. I finished Skye's first POV chapter. Well, I finished the part of that chapter that is from Skye's POV. I've introduced Skye's POV. I've finished introducing Skye's POV. And the manuscript now sits at 42,788 words. So at this point, if all goes according to plan, I am I'm just shy of a quarter of the way there. And I've introduced all the POV characters. I've put all of the different plots kind of in motion. I've got them all started. And I think I'm gonna start drafting this pretty quickly going forward. That said, I was trying to hit 50k and a very particular plot point by Mabon, the Autumn Equinox, but I am about to write that plot point. Like, I could theoretically probably get that plot point written by the end of the week in the next 4 days if I really focus solely on this project for the rest of the week. We've just had Lammas 5 days ago, so because there's about 6 weeks between each of the pagan holidays, each of the spokes on the wheel of the year, I'm at least a month ahead of schedule, basically. What I think I might do, because I've sort of been debating, do I want to just keep writing The Solar Queen and just finish really early, finish the first draft much earlier than I thought, or do I want to take a little breather, a little palate cleanser? And I think because I got this idea for this autumnal short story that I really want to write, I might take a breather from this project once I hit this plot point that I'm talking about. I might just take a little breather from the project, write the autumnal short story that I want to write, and then get back into The Solar Queen, just to give myself a little breather. I don't even think the short story will take a month to write. I still will probably be ahead of schedule, but because I am so ahead, and because I really want to write this short story, I got started last year, but then I got a little derailed just because I was going through some personal stuff. But because I really want to write this short story, I figure why not take a break from this project, writing that short story, which is a part of my collection, The Tales of the Sun and the Moon, which is a collection of short stories set in New Camelot, a lot of them fairy tales and folklore from New Camelot, which this one will be, very much so. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really happy to be ahead of schedule. I'm feeling really good about that. That said, even though I am probably going to break by writing this short story, I think that from this point on, like now that I've strategically put all these plots into motion and now that I've introduced all these POV characters, I think the book is really going to write itself. There will still be moments where I'm going to have to slow down and like be very methodical, but I'm feeling confident about the project, and I'm actually liking it more. I think my candle just died. I have one little flame left. I've been burning this candle since I think since May. It's really lasted a while. I think I'm liking the tone of the book more than I would have if I wrote it several years ago. So even though I waited so long to write this book, it really has been for the best, I feel. Because it's coming together beautifully. I'm feeling really pleased with it. Skye's perspective was a little bit challenging to write. Not because Skye is hard. Well, she is hard to, she actually is really hard to write for me because she's so logical and so detached from her emotions, and I am just not like that. So yeah, she's a little bit tricky for me to write because she's so logical and so detached from her emotions. But she's also fun to write because she's really different from me, and I've already written a short story from her perspective. The short story is called Fairy Dust. It is part of the Tales of the Sun and the Moon, and it is a newsletter exclusive. All you have to do is click the link in my description, sign up for my newsletter, and it'll get sent directly to your inbox. So I've written from her perspective before, so it's not totally new, but it was tricky just because I had already kind of put her plot into motion in Daisy's chapter, so I didn't totally know what to write, but I also knew I needed to write something. It's also weird to write from, well, it's just weird to write from the perspectives of characters in general that are just a lot more sexual than Luna is. I mean, it's not that Luna is asexual, but she is very innocent and very childlike, whereas characters like Skye and Aiden are not. I mean, Aiden is a little bit childlike, but like he's a guy, he's thinking about things in other ways. Even Zale is probably having those thoughts even if he doesn't like voice them in his head, whereas Luna's just like so unaware of sex. Skye is very aware and very comfortable with it, and it's weird to write that because I don't want these books to become spicy. Like, that's really not the point of the Sun and Moon Saga, but like these characters, some of them more than others do have sexual desires, and when I'm writing from their perspective, I have to write that in without having it like completely override the book. And then it's also weird to write from Skye's perspective because she probably, out of all 5 of these POV characters, she probably knows and understands the most. The second being Zale, and then like Daisy is probably the most sort of ignorant because she's been sheltered by the Elven Reserve. So like it's weird to write from the perspective of someone that just knows so much because she knows things that I have to keep hidden from the reader because there's supposed to be like a big reveal later from Luna's perspective or from someone else's perspective, but I have to write them in a way that shows that she knows those things, so if a reader goes back and rereads them, they can see that without like giving them away. So I have to like hint at things craftily without... Yeah, it's kind of confusing. It's so different. And it's weird to like write from Daisy's perspective before this, and then write from Aiden's, and then write from Skye's. So like, yeah, it's a very different experience writing this book than it is writing Aurora and Luna. Also, I never gave you Daisy's Myers-Briggs. I think Daisy is probably an INFP. I'm not totally sure. I guess she could be an ISFP. I'm not totally sure on that one. That's one of the few characters that I feel kind of uncertain about their personality type. But I do think on the Enneagram, she's a 4. I think 4 makes sense for her. And then with Skye, with Myers-Briggs, she, I believe, would be an ENTJ. Very assertive, very logical, very good at taking a leadership position, very good at directing others. And then in the Enneagram, she would be an 8. So, yeah, we've got Luna, INFP, and I believe on the Enneagram a 4. Zale, ISTJ, Enneagram 6. Aiden, ESFP, Enneagram 7. Daisy, I believe an INFP, and Enneagram 4. Skye, ENTJ, Enneagram 8. Actually, Daisy could be an Enneagram 6. I'm not sure. I'm hoping to learn more about her as I continue to write her story. Same with Skye, really. I mean, I know more about Aurora, Zale, and Aiden, as I mentioned earlier in the vlog. So before I end the vlog, I just want to have a chat about kind of where I'm at with my creative process, with this project, and also just in life. So I feel like over the course of this last year, I've been slowly but surely learning this lesson of kind of learning how to straddle that beautiful line between working hard and working purposefully. Purposefully is kind of more important than working hard, but like staying in alignment with what I feel is my life purpose and my life's work, but also not falling into this hustle culture mindset. So something about today that was really magical. I wrote over 5,000, almost 6,000 words, and it happened easily. It happened naturally, organically. I didn't have to force myself to do it. I genuinely wanted to do it. Honestly, this is probably the most words that I have written in one day in like a really long time, like maybe even since moving out, honestly. I used to do really long writing marathons, I'll call them, when I lived with my parents and I didn't work 30 hours a week. I didn't really work much at all. I just basically did my creative work and then did some gig work on the side just to get some money. But I was basically just mooching off of my parents. It was beautiful. I'm so grateful for that time. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And during those times, when left to my own devices, I would often have these massive 10K writing days where I would just sit down and just all day I would write. And I might take like a little 20-minute break here to make some tea or to watch a YouTube video, but I would just be at my computer writing, obsessing. It would be so hard to get me away from my creative work. I would forget to shower and forget to eat. And now I live a life that's a lot more balanced, but while it's good that I've learned how to human and adult and have balance and cook for myself and work a job and all, while it's good that I'm a functional adult, I also really miss that obsessiveness of just being able to sink into a creative project. And I see my boyfriend able to do that. He can just sit on the couch with his laptop for 8 hours, maybe stop to get a cup of coffee or to get a beer or whatever, and he'll just sit there working on his music, on his song, or working on his music video for 8 hours. And then maybe the next day he won't do anything. Maybe he'll watch some interviews, maybe he'll listen to some albums, maybe he'll be going for a hike with me or watching a show with me, or you know what I mean? He kind of just goes with his own flow. Now, granted, he's a lot more left to his own devices. He does have to work, but he sets his own hours and doesn't have a specific schedule. For me, I have a very specific work schedule that I work. I work Thursday all the way through Sunday, so 4 days, and I work about 30 hours. I have to go to work and be this functional adult and be on and like not just go to work and work hard, but also I have to have my lunch packed and I've got to have my outfit laid out and I've got to make sure I'm showered, that my hair looks reasonable because I'm a hairstylist. And it's just, there's a lot of mental energy that for me goes into that routine, even though I really have the routine down. A lot of energy goes into that routine, and because of that, my energy is often depleted in the evening. I work with people, so my energy gets depleted in the evening. And that's part of why I really have this regimen of writing in the morning. I have a writing ritual. Every morning at 6 a.m. I get up and I write, or sometimes I'll work on illustrations, but every morning in the morning I'm creating before work. I'm getting up at 6 a.m. and I'm creating for 3 hours before work. So I've learned to work in this more unnatural way, and it's hard in a sense. It's good in a sense because I have this routine, and the routine allows the books to get written, and it allows the things to get done, and it just, my routine supports me, but at the same time it's hard because I miss days like this where I have tons of energy, tons of creative energy. I wrote 6,000 words, no problem. I have been vlogging, like it's just been easy to create. And I used to have those kinds of days all the time. And now I don't as often because I find that I just go through like the same routine each and every week. I don't really know if this is making sense, but I guess I want to get back to that place where I'm letting myself rest, and then from that rest, I come out of that feeling really, really inspired and ready to create. The thing is though, I have to let go of the fear of not getting things done, because I have this routine of writing in these certain time slots because I'm afraid that if I don't do it then it'll never get done. Now, granted, I'm not going to stop my morning writing routine before work because honestly, practicing that ritual really puts me in a good mood for the workday, and I do like doing it. That said, on my days off, I want to take things at a more leisurely pace, meaning if I want to spend Monday, Tuesday doing like this week, Monday, I basically spent the entire afternoon and evening playing Harry Potter Lego with my boyfriend, having a great time. And yesterday, Tuesday, I also had that cozy self-care day. But then today I wrote 6,000 words, and it was so much fun. I had a way better weekend because I just went with the flow of my energy. I could have forced myself to get up early and write every single day this weekend, and then I probably would have written 1,000 or 2,000 words a day. So I may have written the same or less, forcing myself to do it, but I ended up writing the same or more, just going with my own flow. So even though I kind of have to have somewhat of a regimen because I do work a day job and I kind of got to plan around that, I want to like let go in my off time and just kind of trust that if I give myself what I need to feel creatively inspired, which is time spent reading, time spent watching movies, time spent playing video games, time in nature, time spent practicing spirituality, so prayer, meditation, tarot, yoga, all that. If I give myself the things that I need to feel inspired, it'll just happen. Like I won't be able to not write. I'm not going to just suddenly not be a writer unless I found something that I loved even more, but I don't even know if that's possible. I love writing. I love it. I don't know why everyone else doesn't want to be a writer, honestly. I want to just go with my own flow a little bit more. And also, it's only been recently that I've been allowing myself to work on illustrations in the morning sometimes instead of writing. So I want to kind of, keep moving towards this place where I'm creating more from my heart and more from my soul, and less trying to make everything all perfectly fitting into a box that is just arbitrary and not really authentic to who I actually am. I know that all sounds probably a little bit hippy-dippy, but this is just kind of where I'm going with my journey. I'm in the process of shedding all this bullshit that just isn't mine, this hustle culture, this, I don't even know what it is. I'm just shedding all this stuff that I've learned that isn't me, and I feel like I'm coming back to myself. And it is like a new and improved version of who I used to be. I'll never be child me again. I'll never be the version of myself who I was when I was living with my parents, letting them just like pay my way and like not being a responsible adult. Like, I'll never be that person again, because now I do live on my own. I do have financial responsibilities, and like, I like living on my own. I like taking care of myself. And by the way, no shame if you're an adult and you still live at home. I lived at home until I was 27. I'm just speaking more for me. Like, I went to trade school. I became a hairstylist so I could move out and have something to fall back on. So if it took me 10 or 20 years to create my author career, I would have something else to take care of myself, because for me personally, independence is very, very important. So I'll never be who I was before going through that journey. But that doesn't mean I have to be someone that's inauthentic to who I actually am, if that makes sense. And it's a learning process. Like, I'm experimenting with going more with my flow and being less strict. But at the same time, I do like being disciplined to some extent. I like getting up at 6 a.m. before work and having the discipline of writing. So it's about finding a balance. I know that in my last vlog, I talked about how I was feeling genuinely rested. Well, for a couple of weeks here, I kind of got out of that, and I kind of got back into that hustling mode. And now I'm realizing, no. Play Harry Potter Lego, knit a scarf, sit on the porch and read Pagan Papers by Kenneth Graham. Like, enjoy your life. Chill. Enjoy your life. Everything will just flow the way it needs to flow. It'll unfold the way it needs to unfold. So it's kind of been this back and forth for this last year now of me kind of going from this mode of hustle culture that I had adopted and learned, and then like flowing back into the true, authentic, creative artist that I am. I've been going back and forth, like swinging like a pendulum this last year, and I think I'm finally maybe getting to the point where like I'm really learning the lesson, where I'm actually able to remember it the majority of the time, or at least course correct quickly. And I think that this will be another thing that I'll be learning as I go about this project. I think I'll be learning how to work in a way that is authentic and aligned and truly creative, rather than working in the way that society told me I have to work to be a professional. I hope all that makes sense. If it resonates, please let me know, but this is where I'm going to end the vlog. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm gonna have more writing vlogs, and I'm gonna have other fun, magical, fantastical, whimsical YouTube videos coming out as well. So please subscribe. If you would like to read my book, Aurora and Lunar, the link is in the description. as well as a link to my newsletter. And when you sign up for the newsletter, you automatically get sent both the prologue and chapter 1 to Aurora and Luna. So if you'd like, you can read the prologue and chapter 1 before purchasing the book for yourself, just to see if it's the right fit. Thank you, of course, to everyone who has read or is reading my books, and thank you for all my support in the Lunar Coven, my Patreon, and my Substack. It's the same content on both platforms. I just call it the Lunar Coven. That's the umbrella term. If you would like to support this channel and my writing and my music and my illustrations and just all the creative work that I do, Patreon and or Substack, the Lunar Coven is the best place to do so. And once again, a huge thanks to those of you who are already members of the Lunar Coven. Your support is super, super helpful. Thank you. Also, in the springtime, my band Ghost of a Girl, we released our debut album. It's available on Spotify and anywhere and everywhere else you stream music. So if you would like to listen to it, please click the link in the description and check it out. That would really mean the world to me. I think that's everything. Outros are hard. There's so much to remember. I should just create a list that I can look at, because I'm always like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. If you made it to the end of this video, you deserve a cookie. Yeah, you deserve a gold star. This was a long one, and I'm gonna keep my writing vlogs a little bit shorter than this one in the future, I think, because this one was just like a beast of a video, and it's editing, it's gonna be a lot. But it was really fun to film, and I'm glad that I have it documented, me establishing all these different POVs, because I think it'll be kind of neat to look back on in like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So if you have watched this entire video, thank you so much. And until next time, stay cozy. Basically, I have been working on Aurora and Luna. I'm gonna hit this one sort of major plot point that I need to hit. Major plot point. I've been watching How I Met Your Mother, rewatching. Oh dear Lord, I just realized what was written on my fridge. That's a fun little game that me and my partner play with each other, where we just write weird, perverted, strange things on the fridge and then keep changing them around. But anyway, I hope you didn't see that. I am missing the sugar bowl though, and for those of you that get that reference, A Series of Unfortunate Events, you're awesome. I am actually missing the sugar bowl, and I think it's kind of amazing that I'm missing the sugar bowl, because I'm a huge fan of A Series of Unfortunate Events. I'm trying to be more Song of Ice and Fire about it, where it's like, sex is there, it's explicit, but it's not like, I mean, the show really like hypes it up, but the books, like, it's not, like, it's just kind of there. It's like, you don't read it and like, you know what I mean? It's different. You're not like, anyway.